How's it going, card fighters? I'm Gleaming Garmore, and boy do we have a lot to talk about. Vanguard Overdress just finished airing its first season at the time of writing this, and I think it's time we take a look back on it. While Overdress is by no means a terrible anime, I find myself feeling disappointed in it, not for the reasons you would think, mind you. Please, hear me out, as I have quite a bit to say about the show overall. It's had its ups and downs, and I consider it to have one of the best Vanguard episodes to ever exist, along with just a few that made me wish I was watching any other season. Before delving into detail on that, let's start positive. The show looks great. With character designs by Clamp of Kakyoin Did You Lay This Egg fame, and animation by Kinema Citrus, the show is visually appealing, the characters in it are wonderfully looking. As well as the OST, which had several entirely original lyrical tracks that were each used one time throughout the show's run. They put so much money and effort into these wonderful lyrical tracks, only to use them a single time each, and I find that amazing. I will straight up say that this show's aesthetics are out of the park. There's a few hiccups, like some fangirls of Toya's disappearing in episode 6 between shots, but other than that, they put a lot of effort into how the show looks and sounds. The issues of the show only really arise once we get into the actual writing. Now let's begin with a breakdown of episodes 1 through 12 of Cardfight Vanguard Overdress before we go into more detail. Episode 1, Night at the Amusement Park. Episode 1 begins with our protagonist Yu Kondo making eggs for his two sisters and his mother. We get the sense very quickly that he is a people pleaser. He likes to make people happy. This is further exemplified by his sisters asking him to dress up in cute girls' clothes and him being unable to refuse. Eventually, a line is crossed and he takes his bag and runs away, asking himself why he's incapable of telling people no. Thanks to an encounter with an incredibly unnecessarily included karaoke pervert, Yu meets Megumi Okura. Megumi mistakes Yu for a girl thanks to his outfit, quickly declaring that she's never had any female friends before and essentially throwing her friendship at Yu. The two hang out the whole day, needing to be saved from the karaoke pervert once by Tomari Seto, a cop who doubles as an announcer at the local cardfight hangout, and a second time by Danji Momoyama, a tall idiot who is described as big in many ways by Megumi. Take that as you will. As well as Zaksa Ishigame, a quiet and serene artist. So calm. So very calm. Yu is invited to hang out with the other four, who all happen to be card fighters. They play at an old, seemingly abandoned night amusement park. The park is a great looking location, and I appreciate its aesthetics a lot. Danji has a very important card fight tonight, his 20th consecutive card fight victory in defense of the team's banner. The challenger is Toya Ibata. The fight is gorgeous and suspenseful. It's the best part of the episode. Tomari has lively commentary on the action, and there's a few moments where Danji does things like reaching into the shadows and holding the hand of a unit, or one of them takes what appears to be a real injury when they perform their damage check, only for it to vanish as soon as they react to it. The episode ends with Tomari revealing to the rest of the party that Yu is actually a boy, but not before we have a joke about Danji thinking he's cute. Episode 2, Trickstar. In episode 2, Yu sees Danji working a variety of jobs and decides to follow him so that they can talk. Megumi is close by and sneaks around because she's jealous of Yu getting to spend time with Danji. The boys talk about getting Yu his own Vanguard deck. This leads to Danji laying out a few units and letting Yu pick a new buddy from among them. He settles on the grade 0 Trickstar, even after Danji asks if he'd prefer a stronger unit. Megumi continues to dance around the topic of her jealousy until she meets with Yu at the night amusement park and challenges him to a fight, with the stakes being that if she wins, Yu has to step off. The two have a nice fight, once again commentated by Tomari, that ends in Megumi's defeat. She decides she won't accept her fate and won't let Danji be taken away from her. And then Danji corrects her. He mentions that there's nothing going on between him and Yu. She apologizes and offers Yu a rematch, just for fun this time. Episode 3, Tiger of Kaga. A new challenger by the name of Katsuki appears to challenge Team Blackout. After he defeats Megumi, he demands to fight Danji next. Danji appears and tells him that he can have his fight if he defeats Yu first. Katsuki is told to return 1 week later to fight. Yu is trained by the other members of Team Blackout intensely. The day comes and we get to watch a throwdown between Yuyu's Nirvana deck and Katsuki's Bero Magnus. When Katsuki referred to his 15 cards in Soul as a Tower of Babel that not even God could knock down, I busted out laughing. It was a very Vanguard moment, and I wanted more of this from the show. Anyway, Yuyu survives the 15 Soul Bero Magnus turn and earns his battle against Danji. They duke it out again with Tomari on the mic, because this is the one time she's not cringe. Yuyu scrapes out a victory, and Danji declares that he will be stepping down as a card fighter. Episode 4, Our 7-Day Crusade. Danji retires. Megumi finds a notice that marks the park for destruction. Danji is nowhere to be found in their hour of need, because he is out fishing. He abandoned everybody to go fishing. Megumi tries to talk to her brother Takumi, who owns the park, in order to ask him not to demolish it. He shifts the blame over to Danji, who he left in charge of the park. Megumi rallies Team Blackout to create barricades around the park, and Yuyu even pitches in, bringing drinks and water guns to fend off the demolition team. It turns out that it was all a misunderstanding, however, as Danji returns and laughs it up with Takumi about how the park was only being considered for demolition, not chosen. Episode 5. That's Cardfight Pro Wrestling. The episode opens on Zaksa texting someone about what they want to do tomorrow. He's conveniently watching a pro wrestler on TV. After the intro, it's revealed that Danji is now taking up pro wrestling for some reason. Zaksa sets him up with a match against a real-life pro wrestler, Hiroshi Tanahashi. After some prodding from both Hiroshi and Zaksa, Hiroshi comes up with a brilliantly stupid idea. Danji and Hiroshi would both pro wrestle and card fight. They would play a card fight and then a pro wrestling match in alternation until someone had won. I will say that the whole concept is entertaining to watch, but it dips off for me when it's revealed that Zaksa and Tomari are actually married, and watching Danji get the stuffing beaten out of him was actually her fetish that Zaksa was satisfying for their anniversary. Danji's return to card fighting doesn't exactly feel like a big deal, because Team Blackout didn't have enough time to struggle without him. They just had the amusement park episode, and that was it. Episode 6, Wonder Child. I'll cut to the chase. This is the best episode of the show. It opens on Toya getting ready for another harrowing day at med school. About half of it is flashbacks to Toya's youth. The other half is elaboration on where exactly he ran off to after the first episode. It turns out that he's top of his class, but he has absolutely no passion for it. What he really loves is Vanguard. He first discovered the game when his grandmother brought him a trial deck as a child, wishing for him to have some fun in addition to his studies. The issue is that his parents don't exactly value his passions compared to his grades. They urge him to quit Vanguard cold turkey and focus entirely on his schooling. This pressure is starting to catch up with Toya in the modern day, as he decides that Danji is his mark for his final card fight. He decides he needs to fight Danji one more time and win, so that he can lay his cards to rest for good. When Toya attempts to make good on his goal, he and Masanori Isaki run into Yuyu instead. They go out for dinner together, and Yuyu informs Toya that Danji is no longer a card fighter, despite the fact that he fought just last episode. Instead, Toya and Yuyu decide to have a fight. It ends with Yuyu's victory, which devastates Toya. The episode ends with Toya crying in the rain, apologizing to his family for not being able to keep his promise. He can't quit Vanguard. Not yet. He hasn't proven himself yet. Episode 7, Runny Porridge. Yuyu gets sick, Danji takes care of him, antics ensue, they play a game of Vanguard. Next! Episode 8, Like a Fish in Water. This episode is almost entirely a flashback to the day that Megumi met Team Blackout. It turns out Danji knows Takumi because he used to be one of the landscapers for the Okura household. They used to play Vanguard together until Takumi got too busy. Megumi finds Takumi's old Magnolia deck and follows Danji to the amusement park. Along the way, Megumi manages to break Danji's sunglasses, and Danji manages to break her hair clip. Megumi runs away, sorry for ruining their night, but she comes back the next day to give Danji a replacement pair. Danji reciprocates with a new hair clip and welcomes her to Team Blackout. Fast forwarding to the present day, Tomari is being not freaking normal. She gives a speech about traffic safety at Megumi's school that is weirdly targeted to her and clearly about Danji, thus beginning the problem of women in the show not talking to each other about anything other than men. Tomari continues to bother Megumi about how she needs to make a move with Danji or let it go, to the point where the two of them decide to have a grudge match, commentated this time by some background character. During it, Tomari talks far too enthusiastically about the concept of trapping someone in a cold cell. Megumi wins, and Tomari decides to leave her alone for a while. They all go out to get noodles. Episode 9, Overnight Statue. Zaksa is having some casual games with the other members of Team Blackout and admiring how pretty his Cardinal Deus Orphist is in the sunlight, when Masanori comes to the park in a helicopter and causes it to blow away. Masanori refuses to simply replace the card, and Zaksa is forced to work odd jobs with Danji and Yuyu for the rest of the episode. Masanori appears a few more times to prod Zaksa, and it eventually ends with the two of them having a card fight once Yuyu and Megumi find the missing Orphist. Zaksa mops the floor with Masanori. When Danji shows up at the end of the fight, Masanori warns that Toya will return, and that he will be not the Toya Ibata that they knew before. Episode 10, Fluttering Banner. Some child that the cast seems to know, but we have never seen mentioned before, takes refuge at the night amusement park along with his team banner. This kid, Shinobu, testifies that there's a new mysterious team challenging fighters and promising to burn their banners should they lose. Meanwhile, Yuyu's mother informs him that his dad will be home for the weekend and that he can't go to the park that Saturday. Team Blackout tries to get information out of Shinobu about who exactly is burning these team banners, and Danji is able to figure out that their name is Team Daybreak, and he reacts like he's familiar with them, going off on his own to meet with some woman who appears to be a part of them. We don't see what they talk about. The other teams in town all meet up to discuss what to do about Team Daybreak, and simply decide to fight their hardest. Tomari, Zaksa, and Megumi return to the amusement park to find out that Shinobu has defeated every member of the team at the park. Masanori and Toya have arrived, and they burn the banner that Shinobu brought with him. Zaksa and Megumi square off against Masanori and Toya to defend Team Blackout's banner. They both lose. During all this, Yuyu's dad is telling him that he totally understands if he would rather hang out with his friends and dismisses him to go to the park with him if he wants. Yuyu takes off running, just in time to arrive after the fight. Episode 11, Fire Dragon Ceremony. Masanori wasn't lying about Toya being totally different. When Yuyu arrives on the scene, he blows up the merry-go-round they usually fight on and threatens to burn the Team Blackout banner if Yuyu doesn't fight him in 1 week's time. Yuyu meets Toya washing his hair in the park and has a conversation with him about the concept of resolve. Toya claims that he's thrown away everything in order to achieve victory against Danji. We're never told what this everything is. Instead, we have to draw our own conclusions. Yuyu returns to Team Blackout and tries to get some training in before the battle with Toya. There's a montage of card fights before a much more interesting scene where Yuyu stares at Trickstar over a fire. The world around him fades and we get a very clear image of Trickstar. Yuyu remembers all the times during the fights that he had seen something that was a little off. Danji reaching into the darkness to take hold of Diabolos Girl's Mai-Mai's hand. Energy bullets pelting Toya in the same fight. He starts to realize that maybe there is a power in imagination. Maybe it's what he needs to defeat Toya. Yuyu displays the power his image gives him in one more fight against Megumi, where he takes hold of Blaze Maiden Zone's hand. He's ready. Toya returns. This is their final battle. Toya throws some trash talk about a lack of resolve, and Yuyu does not flinch. Yuyu stands in the face of adversity taller than he ever has, remembering what he has learned in his training, doing his best to play smart. There's some flashy energy attacks and levitating cards. Yuyu asks why Toya looks like he isn't having fun, despite being so passionate the last time they met. Each of them takes turns pushing each other closer to the limit. Eventually, Yuyu checks his overtrigger after being perfectly guarded by Toya. He gives the power to Virina Valiente to force a second perfect guard out of Toya or lose him the game. Valiente's first attack connects, allowing Yuyu to discard one card and stand back up. Surprise, surprise, Toya did have a perfect guard. Letting Valiente hit was actually a ploy to remove a card from Yuyu's hand and finish the game on the next turn. There's a very intimidating shot in which the flames that surrounded the two turn from red to blue and Toya approaches slowly. Then we see Yuyu and Toya as Bastion on the surface of the planet Krei. Toya absolutely brutalizes Valiente and closes out the game. Yuyu lost. The Team Blackout banner burns, Megumi and Tomari cry, and just when all hope is lost, Danji returns. Episode 12, Night Attack on the Heavens. After Yu losing his final and most important card fight of the season, Donji appears before Toya. Toya, of course, challenges Donji in order to complete his mission. They banter back and forth about resolve as if this is an episode of Vento Oreo, and this fight is wonderfully animated. And the gameplay shows Toya's desperation. On the second to last turn, Donji breaks Toya's entire board apart, only for Toya to try and counterattack by calling 5 cards from his hand. 5 cards that are way weaker than what he had before. Toya, of course, cannot make his final push and loses. Then there's a scene where they, astrally project naked and punch each other for about 3 minutes. I don't know what that was about. Cut to reality, and Donji tells Team Blackout that Toya is their new leader. Meanwhile, Team Daybreak appears to be brewing something. They're still going around burning banners, and that lady that Donji was talking to and a girl we've never seen before are playing Vanguard and talking about making their move. The season ends. That was an awful lot of summary for a season whose plot ended up being rather generic overall. Team of Gamers wants to have fun. Tryhard appears that threatens their fun, but they aren't given enough motivation. In a lot of ways, simply feels like a rehashing of Team Asteroid. Except we have a lot less reason to care about Team Daybreak versus Team Blackout than we did to care about Team Q4 versus Team Asteroid. There were personal stakes between the Asteroid and Q4 confrontations, but Toya is just kind of this guy that each of them met once, and that's about it. When you also consider that the season was 12 episodes and the overarching plot is centralized to about 6 of them, that should tell you something. If I were to compare this show to another 12-episode anime that is beloved by many, Puella Magi Madoka Magica, it would show a clear difference in plot structure. Madoka uses its time very efficiently to build an overarching story that keeps you invested in what happens next, all while having time to flesh out its characters into real human beings with thoughts, ideals, hopes, dreams, and motivations. Even bad 12ers like Danganronpa 3 Future Arc knew that you had to at least keep things moving so that you didn't run out of time. If you have a story to tell and only 12 episodes to tell it, then you don't have time to avoid telling it. Cardfight Vanguard Overdress drops the ball in terms of telling its story at a reasonable pace, instead electing to cram the vast majority of its story into the last 4 episodes of the season. That said, plot isn't everything in a card game anime. Another hugely important part is its characters. Unfortunately, Overdress also fails in this regard. Despite the massive amount of time spent fiddling around with things that don't matter, the members of Team Blackout don't really get characterized beyond being quirky vehicles for jokes. Characters talk to each other all the time, but in ways that don't really tell us anything about them. Yu starts out the show with a lot of potential for growth, but the ways in which he grows are not very focused on by the show. I'll talk more about Yu later, but let it be known that his inability to refuse a request is really not touched on at all. We don't know if he understands why it's bad and wants to grow from it, or if he just incidentally got over it, or if he's still the same. Surprisingly enough, only about 4 of the episodes are actually focused on Yu. In every other episode, someone else takes the forefront. And this would be fine and dandy if it meant these characters actually got development, rather than remaining as one note as they always are. Donji is the poster child for one-note caricatures. I have no idea what he wants by the end of this show. He keeps trying to quit card fighting despite clearly loving it. He works a million jobs, but we have no idea why he works so many. Why did he just suddenly decide he wanted to be a pro wrestler? How does Donji get convinced to do the things he does? We just don't know. Donji is this mystery character that simply does what the plot asks of him, which is bizarre considering he's in almost every episode of the show. Actually, no, I think he is in every episode. There might be one where he's missing. Maybe. Megumi is too busy thirsting after Donji and being casually transmisogynistic to actually be a character that stands on her own. She's hot-headed and jumps to conclusions, and they could have done a lot with that. But all they really used it for was haha Donji x Yu jokes, and that's about it. Tomari's entire personality is a cop and also a loud weirdo, and that's about it. She talks publicly and loudly about whipping Zaksa, like some kind of creep, and yet everybody loves her because she says, "Hey guys!" Zaksa's character is one that actually just kind of gets worse the more we learn about him, because he simply becomes more and more contradictory, and it becomes more and more difficult to understand how he should react in any given situation, which of course is a cover so that we don't know when Zaksa is acting out of character. When Zaksa was this Zen painter guy who was kind of aloof, we had an idea of how he would react to things. Instead, it's revealed that he's been a delinquent who barks sometimes instead of talking, and I just have no idea what to do with that information. Masanori is just a rude rich guy who doesn't pay attention to anyone's feelings. Sometimes he tells lies, and that's kind of funny, but he's hardly around for us to care about him. And lastly, Toya. Oh, Toya. You had so much potential. Starting in episode 6, you were the first character who had any real drive, and I appreciated that a lot. And what did you do with it? You made a complete personality 180 entirely off screen. Much like Zaksa, we learned more about Toya, and instead we have no idea who he is anymore. Despite being a quote-unquote character-focused anime, I walk away from 12 episodes of Overdress not understanding who these characters are or what they want in life. Toya is the only one with a little bit of ambition, and Yu had a bad habit to kick, but it's never really touched on after the first episode. Let's talk about Yu a bit longer, why don't we? When trailers and promotional information were coming out, it became very quickly apparent that Yu would be dressing in dresses on occasion. We were assured by Yu's voice actor, as well as Keita Mori, that a core theme of the anime would be diversity. This led me to believe that there was a slim possibility that Yu was a trans girl. This would have been groundbreaking in terms of card game anime. Vanguard could have been responsible for the first transgender card game anime protagonist ever. And instead we got jokes about Yu being forced into a dress and being attractive to grown men. I've written a twitlonger about this topic that I will be linking in the description, but to paraphrase, I'm incredibly disappointed with the way the whole issue was handled. There was little to no respect given to the possibility of Yu exploring his relationship with gender, even after painfully obvious metaphors like Zaksa's talk about butterflies in episode 2. For an anime whose core theme is diversity, the cast is remarkably cisgender and heterosexual. Even the notion that any of these characters could be gay is treated as a joke. There are multiple episodes dedicated to making jokes about the possibility of Donji kissing Yu, despite Donji being like 5 years older than Yu. It's rancid. All these points are things that prevent me from enjoying Overdress to its fullest extent. Before we close out, though, I'd like to address some common arguments I've seen in favor of Overdress before I get them in my comments. But they still have more seasons. Just because a show has more seasons ahead of it does not mean that each season itself does not need to be a satisfying product. If we simply allow a show to be bad because we know it has more seasons to air, we get Voltron. I don't want Vanguard to be Voltron. There's just 12 episodes. 12 episodes that make up a complete season of this show. While 12 episodes is not much compared to, say, Vanguard 2011, compared to Overdress, these 12 episodes amount to what the first 65 episodes of Vanguard 2011 were to it. It is a complete season intended to tell a story all its own. But X episodes into OG Vanguard, they were doing blah blah blah. OG Vanguard gave us an idea of who these characters were and what they wanted incredibly early on. We knew Aichi's goal was to encounter and fight Kai again one day. We knew Kamui wanted to pursue his silly schoolgirl crush, and we knew Kai wanted to fight stronger and stronger fighters. We knew Misaki had work that week. We had something the characters strived for, a reason to root for them and to see them reach their goals. This show doesn't need a trans character to be good. This one's true. But can you please look inside yourself and ask why you were upset that we want a few more positively represented trans characters in anime? Is there something wrong with it? If so, that sounds like a you problem. Cardfight Vanguard Overdress is an incredibly stylish anime that fumbles its writing whenever possible. It's not the most satisfying watch, but I do adore its flashy animation. I hope future seasons improve upon where we are. The state Overdress is left in after its first season makes me worry that this is what we have to expect out of Vanguard as a quote-unquote real seasonal anime. Flat characters, rushed plot, and casual transphobia. It doesn't have to be this way. It can get better. I'll see you guys some other time.